Hi, this is Darren Newcomb, and on this episode of Floss Weekly, I'm joined by Dan Lynch to talk about the 2600 Hertz project and something new that they've got for us. It's called Kazoo. It's a free business cloud telephone system with developer APIs, and that's the key. That's coming up right now on Floss Weekly.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
Bandwidth for Floss Weekly is provided by Cachefly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Floss Weekly with Darren Newcomb and Dan Lynch, recorded on August 1st, 2012. Kazoo. Welcome to another edition of Floss Weekly. I'm Darren Newcomb, and I'm joined this week by Dan Lynch. Dan, are you there?
I am here.
Awesome.
Good to be back.
Great, thanks for joining.
2 weeks in a row.
I know, for both of us, it's a little strange to be back, and we just kind of switched positions. I'm doing host, you're doing co-host. It doesn't really matter. I mean, we get along so well. We just ask questions, and all the magic happens behind the scenes, so it's kind of cool. So thanks for joining again. We've got a really cool project to talk about today, and this is a guest that we've had on before, the 2600 Hertz project. And we're going to be talking about something new that they've come up with, and I think everyone's going to like this. It's really cool. I've had a chance to play with it, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun for everybody. In fact, hopefully we'll even be able to do a little bit of a live demo. So Randall's not here. He's traveling. He's at was at the Fisley conference, which is down in Brazil. When I was down there, it was at Porto Alegre. I'm not sure. I think it's still at Porto Alegre in Brazil at one of the universities there. Have you ever been down there, Dan?
I haven't, no, but I'm really jealous, I must say.
Yeah. So we're going to be talking about have you played with any of the 2600 stuff? Do you know much about it?
I've got to confess, I don't know a massive amount about it, so I'm really looking forward to hearing more. I know a little bit about Asterisk, and I've used FreeSwitch now and again, which is related, so I'm really looking forward to seeing what they've got to offer.
Yeah, me too. And I used to work on PBX and telecom stuff back in the good old days. Just after I got out of college, it was a lot of fun. I ran a lot of cables, unfortunately, but also got to play with some of their PBX software, and I've played a little bit with Asterisk since then. So it's really cool stuff. I think it's amazing what people are able to do with open source these days. So we're going to find out about that. Before we bring on our guests, I just want to read a brief quote from an article. This is a MarketWatch article about a new product we're going to be talking about here. And this is a quote from a customer, actually. It says, after a short introduction to the interface, we literally never heard from the customer again. Kazoo keeps our call load down so we can cut back on support hours. Learning a PBX in 30 minutes would be impossible with any other provider because the Kazoo interface is completely drag and drop. It doesn't get any easier than that. We're showing the customer exactly the same tool we're using, and they love it. This is from a 2600 customer, Joseph Mordica, CEO of Comtel Connect. So that gives you an idea of what we're going to be talking about today. So let's go ahead and talk to our guests, Darren Schreiber and Karl Anderson. Guys, how you doing?
Good. Hi there.
Good.
Thanks for having us on the show. Morning.
Now you guys are with the 2600 Hertz project, and we should let our viewers know, our listeners know that we've had you guys on before. I think, Darren, we've had you on before, right?
Correct. It was a little over a year ago, actually, when we announced a product that previously was named Whistle. Yeah, we've been on before, and we're glad to be back.
Right. So I would encourage people to go back and listen to that episode. It's really easy. Just go to the TWiT TV website, and if you go, you can search for 2600HZ. There's a little search function there. It'll bring you right to that episode, and you can get some more background. So we're not going to spend a lot of time on what 2600 is today, but I do want to at least give people that either are too lazy to go back and listen to that episode, or just so people understand what 2600 is. Why don't you give us a brief overview of what the project is and what it's all about?
Sure. So 2600 Hertz started as an open source project. Basically, it's evolved into a company and an open source project. And we build telecommunications software, specifically switching software, that connects endpoints and service providers and really allows you to run a telecommunications infrastructure. It originally was around voice with some ideas around SMS and video. It's evolving much more into doing all of those things and then integrating with anything else that's out there. We combine tools like FreeSwitch and OpenSips and Big Couch or CouchDB into basically a full turnkey platform. And actually, the interview that you're referencing about a year ago was the announcement of an API-based platform that allows you to control and manipulate telecommunications services. And that announcement went very well and has been well received. And there's a lot of people who have built products on top of that. Again, like the one you referenced at the beginning of the call from the MarketWatch article. And so this is sort of the next evolution of this product. It's growing, and it's growing in sort of what it can do, and it's also growing in sort of people being aware of it and learning what it's all about.
Right. Now, how does this differentiate from other communications, open source communications platforms that are out there? For example, Asterisk. How does this compare or differentiate itself from those projects?
So I think you'll find that Asterisk is the older, more mature product, I guess you could say, in terms of that it's been around for a long time, and so it's sort of still the market leader in terms of add-ons and brand name. But about 5 years ago, Karl, I guess it's probably 6 or 7 even now. The FreeSwitch, one of the top contributors to the Asterisk project, actually left the project to start a rewrite. He felt that the Asterisk code base needed some significant improvements, both in speed and or performance, and also sort of the decoupling of PBX features. We're sort of reaching an era now where the functionalities of the PBX are sort of blurred with features you might find in other telecommunications products.
Yeah, there's far more integration. With our product as well, it's not even so much focused on the switch itself, but how do you get all the pieces to work together and build very large, very scalable systems very easily.
Yep. And so our specific focus is taking scalable products like FreeSwitch and OpenSips and Big Couch, and then adding logic and web and integration components to them, and allowing you to scale them across a WAN. So whether that's the internet, whether it's your own private WAN, whether it's any other sort of network infrastructure, the idea is, how do we, in today's environment, knowing that with virtualization or with commoditized hardware, how do we sort of take advantage of those things that are continuously changing to some degree? Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you mentioned Whistler, and then in the beginning I mentioned this new product we're going to be talking about called Kazoo. So what's the relationship between the two, between Kazoo and Whistler? And of course, you mentioned the 2600 hertz project really pulls everything in together. But maybe just so we can set the groundwork here, what's the relationship between Whistler, which we announced on the other episode, and then Kazoo, which we're going to be talking about primarily here?
So Whistler was, it's kind of a funny story actually. Basically, we were operating on the premise with Whistler that if we built a really powerful, scalable telecom platform and made it easily accessible via APIs, that people would come flocking to the product. That basically you wouldn't have to do the investment to go figure out how to set up an infrastructure, which is very time consuming and very costly to maintain for operations staff. What we found was that giving people the building blocks still wasn't enough. Most people wanted something out of the box that functioned and had a UI and let them sort of go to market immediately. And only after that point, only after they had sort of proven what does this platform do, and what does a nice UI look like, we kind of had to seed the market with ideas and
give them an example and really show kind of what it could do to get their feet wet, so they could get an understanding of it, because it's not complicated, but there are some moving pieces to it, and you need to have that kind of entry into it to understand what's going on.
And we just found that people were spending a lot of time installing it rather than using it, and there's so much you can do once it's installed. Like, we didn't want that to be the focus. We didn't want what hardware to put it on to be the focus anymore. We didn't want the creativity is around, how can I hook my phone up to my car, or to my to do videos for screen sharing in educational facilities. It's not about how you set your host name and where do I place my servers. Nobody cares about that stuff. We care very much about it, and certainly the audience who watches this show will be intrigued by it, but the end user doesn't care about it. They just expect their phone or their video conferencing unit or whatever it is to work. So I think Whistler was our first crack at, hey, open source community, and hey, telecom geeks, here's this awesome set of tools you can go use and put together. Let's see what you can build with it. And we got a good response from that. That's the reason we're even here today, is because we got a good response to that. We had a bunch of partners and a bunch of sponsors from some of the largest telecom companies in the world, approached us and engaged with us formally once we released that stuff. But we still hadn't achieved the goal of how do we make this really easy for people to get started and play with in an open source way. And so that's what Kazoo really is. This is our first crack at saying, okay, it's maybe not Apple-esque or 100% polished, but everything you need is now there. It's stable. You can build an entire telecom company. You can build a phone company on this platform. And when I say that, we're not talking a little tinker toy. We're talking, you could build something that powers a small city potentially on this
very substantial.
platform.
And not just a telecom company, though. I mean, there's lots of options
video and
to build
SMS. I mean, anything that's media and communications related.
Right. So before we get too far, let's talk about exactly, and you're getting there now. Now that we've set the stage here, what is Kazoo? Explain it in simple terms, and then we'll go into the details.
All right.
We'll let Karl take that one.
Thank you. So Kazoo is kind of we took the Whistler project and we wrapped it around our interface, and we made it much more accessible to everybody. And we also opened up the hosted solution so that you could hit the ground running. You can just sign up for an account and you immediately have a number. You have SIP credentials. You can get a phone registered and get going. We started building out the applications so that you can see how the system interacts. For instance, we have a developer tool that lets you see what the APIs are doing and how they all come together. And we tried to start to give you the entry points so that you can kind of understand what it is that we're trying to, or at least the power that we're giving you through the platform itself.
And I think, to be clear, Kazoo is the combination of putting some finishing touches on the platform you can install yourself. And then we have what we're calling Kazoo Beta, which is really a hosted solution where you can go online and basically try the stuff out. And you can actually start your business on our platform and later move it to your own platform, which is a really interesting way to start a business. It's like try before you buy. I mean, we're back to Schreiber almost, I guess. I don't know what else to compare with, where you can kind of play with it on somebody else's dime, on somebody else's platform, and move your customers over later. So that's really what Kazoo is it's sort of the final pieces for getting people going quickly and giving them a solution where they can really scale it up.
Yeah, I have to say I tried this out earlier. In fact, we're going to show people what this looks like in a little bit. I tried this out thanks to a guest account that you guys provided, and I was pretty impressed. I mean, I've set up business telephone systems. I used to install business telephone systems as my job, and I've got to say this makes it really easy, almost too easy to actually set up very, very complicated, you could set up a call center, you could set up simple VoIP line, you could set up all kinds of stuff with this. Like you say, you could even go all the way up to setting up a small telecom company with this, provided you have the right infrastructure. So that was going to be one of my questions is it just going to be just a hosted solution for demo purposes to kind of show off the API, or it sounds like from what you guys say, you can actually take the code or take your setup anyway, export it out or something, and then bring it into a hosted scenario. Is that correct?
Absolutely. So if you start out on our platform, you could start to bring on your customers and grow with us. But if you decided to take it onto Metal or something in your own data center, we can actually migrate that in real time without losing any calls, so that you can just have a really graceful switchover from the hosted system into your own environment, or vice versa if you were interested in doing that as well.
And just to be clear, the entire platform was designed for fault tolerance, right? So I'll since we're on good relationship with this gentleman, I'll go ahead and use him as an example. You can take the gentleman you mentioned at the beginning, Joe at Comtel. He honestly was one of our very early adopters, and he has impressed me tremendously. He just hit the ground running. He built an iPad app that integrates with the APIs we exposed. He's built an entire business that offers cloud hosting and other things in addition to our product, and just bundled them together. And so, he's basically built it into sort of a new age telecom company. Because what is telecom becoming? It's not just becoming phone calls, right? It's all sorts of stuff. I mean, why is Verizon buying data centers, right? Why are people, Comcast is offering security services where you can monitor via video your house, right? So telecom is a very blurry space right now in terms of what content is being pushed over the telecom lines and what telecom lines you can use in order to transmit data. And I think that this product sort of opens the door to intentionally, see what people do when you open those doors a little further. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds great. I mean, so I'm curious. You can host it yourself. So what kind of hardware and software and stuff would I need to host it? Is it run off its own web server? Do you need to set up Apache, all that kind of stuff?
So we've broken it into multiple components, and we actually provide an interface which lets you deploy the system yourself. It's yet another thing that we did that's sort of unique. Is I always found that downloading ISOs and other things is time-consuming and kind of annoying. So we actually built a tool called Cluster Manager, which is going through a redo, and it will be re-released next week as a new version, I hope, if not the week after. And it basically connects to your server, to any SSH-compatible server remotely. And as long as it's running CentOS, it will actually copy the software over and install it. And the reason we did that is most people aren't very good at planning their VoIP infrastructures. We've kind of learned that over the years. And so the whole point of this software is kind of, quietly, we've already predicted that you're going to outgrow whatever you install initially if you're successful. I mean, look, if you're not successful, you're going to turn it off. Right? But if you are successful, hopefully that means you're getting more clients and have more traffic, and that's going to mean that suddenly you're going to want an extra data center where you've got a full redundancy, and then you're going to want a cluster in the UK, and then you're going to want et cetera, et cetera. So we actually tried to make those concepts the click of a button. So you can start with as little as one server for sort of testing and kicking the tires, if you want a fully redundant setup, we recommend 6 servers, but they can be small servers. When we first started our hosting platform, we had all 512 meg servers at Rackspace. And those worked great. So you're talking $40 a month times 6 servers, 8 servers if you really want to isolate components out. You have a fully redundant stack where the entire data center in Chicago can go offline and Dallas will kick back in and take over. Yeah. And we did that for a long, long time with a lot of success.
And if you hit if you have a peak load or if you bring on a big customer, it's transparent to add them in. You just Correct. Go to the tool. And since the tool knows about the other servers, it can inform them that the new one has come online, Correct. Check that it's available and that it's ready to take calls. And then, like I say, SIP traffic will start flowing to it. But it also works the other way as well. If you lose your big customer, hopefully you don't, but if you did, you can drop off all those resources that you acquired to handle their traffic. So you're not impacted by that as well.
So it's sort of like, if you're familiar with OpenStack or other initiatives like that, we started that management tool actually well before those OpenStack initiatives and things like that were popular. And we made a very good decision, in my opinion, which is we knew that other solutions would evolve that we might want to combine with, not compete with. So we just need a Linux box, basically. At the end of the day, if you give us 1 or more Linux boxes, we will be able to put stuff on them. And we're slowly making the tool more and more dynamic, so that it both tells you which components are over-tapped and then allows you to split them out without taking down the entire system. Yeah. The goal is not minimal downtime. The goal is no downtime. So, forget this 5.9 stuff. That's going to happen inherently somehow, but that shouldn't be because of our software. The plan that we should have is that no component requires maintenance or time offline.
We played with the idea as well, is that the system could, if it detected a machine like in Rackspace was no longer doing what it needed to do, is to use the Rackspace APIs to just go ahead and destroy the machine, spin up another one, Correct. Request that it become part of the cluster as a free switch node, for instance, and the software would then go out and you just sleep right through it, and the next morning your cluster's still healthy and doing everything it should be doing.
Does that make sense?
Excellent. Yeah, definitely. And I'm sure every sysadmin listening to this will love the phrase, you just sleep right through it, and then the next day you just come in and notice that it's done it.
That is actually on record, that is our joke, is that we want the default response to alerts to be go back to bed, Cool. I've spent too many years in operations and in software as a service before it became sort of a popular buzzword known as the cloud to I've just spent too many weekends in a data center moving machines and apologizing to customers when there was downtime. It's just unacceptable.
Driving out 2 in the morning.
2 in the morning, reboot something. I mean, we all have these stories if you've been in operations. And
yeah, nobody wants that. So we have a question from the IRC actually to do with the actual the way you've built this and so on. You mentioned that you're using your stack, if you like, is FreeSwitch, and then you've got a couch or big couch as you're using, and other things in there like Erlang and so on. But somebody was actually asking in the IRC, Steve Dorries was saying, what kind of advantage does using, say, CouchDB or Big Couch give you over something like Postgres or something else? Why did you choose that for this project?
I love this question. Unfortunately, I can go on for hours about this, so I'll try and tape it in. We had a previous rendition of what we had hoped would be a multi-tenant, scalable FreeSwitch plus database solution before, and it included the typical components of MySQL, PHP, Apache, and FreeSwitch. I think in our IRC dev channel, there is still a funny topic that was set by one of the contributors, which was something about if DB equals SQL, die. Because we had spent so much time trying to figure out, we wanted the system to be modular, and that meant that every single user who installed our software might have a different set of data they were storing because they had different components installed.
I'm not sure any 2 schemas were the same across any installation.
And what ended up happening is we would spend all this time in bug reports trying to figure out what the heck was wrong with somebody's schema instead of figuring out what was going on with the telephony side. We became glorified database administrators, and then in the code we were so scared to change the schema after that point. It just became one hack after another, and it was always related to the database. The performance was slow because of the database hacks we put in. The hacks we put in was because of the modularity we wanted. It became clear that we hadn't done enough modeling of the possible schemas beforehand that I'm not sure we could have. We needed the experience.
We didn't know where it was going. We had people contributing modules. I mean, so one of his favorites was I had a table in there called the registry, which was just a serialized array like because we couldn't keep up with the schema changes.
Yeah. And it just became, it was not what we had originally envisioned in terms of how it would end up looking. Not easy for the users. When we started reading about NoSQL and sort of the sort of NoSQL movement, and specifically database to use, we basically knew that in telecom we always needed to be up, and so we really needed any database to be able to be a master at any given time, and for the network to be able to be severed between servers and then come back up online later, possibly even a day later, a week later, potentially in a really bad scenario. And continue to operate and all that data to kind of jive back together. In my experience, you can't do that with MySQL or Postgres. Maybe with Postgres, but not without a lot of trouble. And then you have the schema management on top of this. So again, to be clear, the cloud and the Big Couch decision was really based on master, multi-master replication or synchronization with the ability to have writes to the same document on 2 servers, free-form schema, disconnected servers. There's actually a big, long article on our website about why we chose Big Couch, and it also shows as evidence that we did look at all the other solutions. We looked at Mongo, we looked at
the SQL solution, and the relational solutions, and the other thing too that we've hit on is we can move the data very easily into yours or back to ours. And you can both move the data so that becomes the authoritative copy, but we can also maintain 2 authoritative copies. So what it lets us do is, for instance, if you're running CPE equipment, you can have your PRI card and everything in the office and still have a duplicate set up in the hosted environment in case those cards go down, or who knows, right?
It basically jived 100% with our goal of having all the components be spread out and no guarantees of reliability. And if you actually look at Google has published a very interesting doc on like one of their educational sites where they sort of teach about general computing technology. And it's all about distributed computing. If you actually go into Google and type in Google distributed computing, there are a bunch of rules which they list as if you want to call yourself a cloud or a distributed provider, here are sort of the basic things to adhere to. And there are things in there like, unlike older software in a distributed computing system, you can't assume that you have bandwidth or network, right? You have to assume that those things may go away. in the software you write. Right? The software has to not crash because the network went away. And that is the type of thing that Big Couch absolutely subscribes to. And we just haven't found it in any other product with this much reliability.
Good answer. So what about, I want to kind of get into the product a little bit here before we run out of time. One of the things I did want to ask about though, for example, I set up a, when you first sign in to the service, or when you first sign up for the service, I should say, it asks you to go find a local number, right? So I'm just kind of wondering, how did you guys implement that? And, what are the costs associated? How are you guys able to afford to allow people to go out and select a local number? I mean, it's similar to the way, Google Voice works or something. When you first sign up, it says, okay, now let's go out and find a number in your area. And you put in your area code and it goes and searches, right? So how does that actually work?
So that's a very good question. In a previous life, I've worked at several telcos now, where I've now sort of learned about what things cost money and what in reality don't really cost that much money. One of the myths or things that people get dinged on is telephone numbers. Telephone numbers to a consumer include a lot of stuff. They include the ability to have 911, they include caller ID name, they include possibly SMS overlay. There's all these things that in reality, for our system, you don't necessarily use all those features right off the bat. So the phone numbers you're getting are actually fairly stripped down, where we've actually taken some of the relationships we have and been able to get pricing that basically makes the costs negligible for us. And again, if I have to hire an engineer to sit in IRC to teach people how to install our software on Linux, or I could take that money and pay for a bunch of phone numbers so that people can try out the system, and kick the tires and get going quickly. I'm going to opt for kicking the tires and getting going quickly. And basically, we started looking at our bills, and ironically, this hosted environment used to just be a sort of sandbox we played with for a long time. And we basically said, look, we have all these servers now. We have almost 170 servers under management. And an awful lot of them are basically just sitting there doing nothing. We said, what is the cheapest way to do something with these servers, make them useful? And so we said, what if we just give away these inexpensive phone numbers, because we're already paying for a lot of the other services that power those numbers. And that's what we do. We give them away, and we'll basically deactivate them after 60 or 90 days of no use. And we'll send you an email before we do that, so you don't freak out. And people who want to stick around and play with the service or use it as a sandbox can. And new people coming in can try it out. And people who, it's only for inbound calling. So if you want to go make outbound calls or do other things, then hopefully you'll actually contribute back to the project by using the other pay resources we have. And if you don't, honestly, contributions come in all forms, in my opinion. They come in suggestions, they come in bug fixes, feedback, all this stuff where people are taking time is time that we didn't have to put into it that collectively makes for better products. So if giving the phone numbers away gets people in the door quicker, then I think that's a really good plan for us. So that's that's the big reason we've done that. And what you're seeing in the phone number inventory is a collection of different providers that we've worked with who are actual CLECs out there. We're very picky about who we work with. And we have some blog articles up about why. You can look up the LCR one. It's got some funny pictures. But that's what that tool is showing you is number inventory from different providers that we work with, where we can basically afford to give you that number to try it out and play with.
Right. And we should say, too, I mean, we have a lot of international listeners. This is U.S. only, correct?
It is U.S. only. I couldn't believe how much response we got from international on this launch. You should see that we have people coming into my office every single day saying, so how can I squeeze this person from anywhere from Nigeria to the UK to Australia? I mean, it's been all over the place.
Yeah, it has been everywhere.
So
we did not anticipate that on this launch.
So we're going to move after that probably pretty quickly. And that move, we already know how to get numbers in all those other areas. We just didn't think there'd be any demand, but there is clearly. So we're probably going to branch out to offer both phone numbers in other countries while also seeing what we can do to make it so those people can test for the inexpensive fee.
And it's kicked off some of other initiatives like, for instance, internationalization on the UI and things like that, getting better with that.
And even a UK cluster we just spun up last week, so we're going to be able to offer the hosted platform in the UK and surrounding territories. it looks like we're going to end up doing this in Australia as well.
Wow. Well, let's jump into the user interface a little bit and show people what it actually looks like, because I think people will be surprised at how good this actually looks. It looks great. So I mean, and I don't know what your design background is on this, but it turns out that it's I thought a really pretty interface. It looks really good. There's a quick dashboard when you first log in that shows you how many numbers, how many devices you have, how many users you have, voicemail boxes, so forth. It's just kind of a quick dashboard here that gives you kind of that information, and then you can drill down from the VoIP services. You can drill down on all kinds of stuff, your account details, which I won't go into, registration, call flows, feature codes, those kinds of things, and then a bunch of advanced things that we'll maybe talk a little bit about as we go through this, just so people can know where these things are. For example, media, to set up a new media, whatever you want to call it, a new media sound file, something, whatever. So I just wanted to go into the call flows and let people kind of see what this looks like. The other thing I really like when I went into the call flows was that you had you don't just click on call flows and get nothing like you do in a lot of interfaces. You click on call flows and you get a little step-by-step quick help walkthrough, so to speak, and it really works. It's like, yeah, that's exactly what you do. You click on call flow, you drag the things that you want into the thing, and then you save it. And it's that easy. And it's never this easy. I mean, at least from my experience. I haven't been in telecom I haven't been there for 14 years now. It's been a while. But even when I was there, I mean, it was really complicated to set this stuff up. And you guys have done such a great job. So for example, if I just click on the call flow, the simple call flow I created, you can see how easy this is, right? So all I did was I clicked on the number that I wanted to associate with this call flow. So in other words, when that number rings, this is what's going to happen. And you can see, I play some media, and then I go into a numbering menu, press 1 for this, press 2 for that. And all I had to do to get that was to drag a button over here, and depending on what stage the interface is smart enough to figure out, like, oh, I could put a conference here, or I could put a conference down here, and all you have to do is drag it and drop it onto there, and it will it'll automatically let's give it another one. It'll automatically add that to. I don't have any conferences set up, so
it's okay. You can secretly leave it blank.
Yeah,
still add it
yeah.
there.
So it'll automatically add that option to the menu that I set up, because that's where I dragged it. I mean, it could not get any easier, and I think this is really great. How did you guys come up with this? I mean, do you have a dedicated design person working on the interface?
Well, I don't know if you saw Blue Box, but that was our attempt to make a simple interface from an engineering perspective. We thought it was great. I thought it was great.
I would disagree.
So, one of the lessons learned there is that the designers really make a huge difference. And we have a fantastic designer, Droovy, who Darren brought in, and she's been working a lot on both the user interface, but also the flow and how user experience as well.
So I'm probably the pessimist in the group. So I would argue that the interface is actually, it is nice. It's not nice enough, and it's not simple enough. We, within the next month, will actually be, or let's call it 2 months, because we're usually a little behind schedule, but we will be releasing something that actually lets you set up a one-click PBX. Because what we found with this interface is, even though this is simple for people who've used a telecom system before, which was our original target, we're getting a lot of attention from people who have not ever used or built a telecom system before.
And don't
this
need
becomes,
the power.
And they don't need it.
Exposing here is just adding some
They need one
complexity.
menu, they have office hours from 8 to 5, and they have 20 extensions. And we actually have gotten really good at figuring out what a good set of common functionality is that people want. And we're also getting really good at figuring out when we haven't met that common set of functionality, it's almost as important to figure out what is the first thing they're going to try and want to change, and guide them to that first. There's almost a sequence of events that people's minds seem to operate in.
And let them grow with it. Because one of the nice things that we have in our platform is up on the top there, that VoIP services is an application. So you could come into the platform using a simple PBX, never see call flow, just add a user and it creates a voicemail extension, a call flow, and everything behind the scenes. Then when you grow and you begin to want to have some more power, you can switch over to the other app, and everything you did in the simple PBX is now represented in VoIP services terms as that app represents it.
And I think that is also one of the most important things to know about this launch of Kazoo. We never dreamed of building a hosted PBX platform. I want to be very clear that the system is not just a hosted PBX platform. That is one application that you can do on this system. It happens to be the low-hanging fruit for us because people know what a hosted PBX is. They're still expensive, so it's kind of disruptive that we're sort of giving it away for free. It's very powerful. It's very pretty, which people aren't used to. But if you actually, I don't know if we can hop back to your screen.
Sure.
But if you can hover over on the top right, under your name and go to what's called the App Store. And again, this needs some graphical enhancement still. But these are just 5, and we have almost 14 of these planned for just this year. These are applications that you can turn on or off on a per account basis. And let me just explain what each one of them is that's listed here. I'll give you an example. What you just showed was how to create your own hosted PBX. But what if you want to sell PBX services? What if you want to resell services? If you turn on the accounts button, you will get a tab at the top, which now allows you to use multi-tenant, and it's going to refresh your page. You can see that on the top bar, you're going to get a brand new button that says accounts. And you can now actually add new customers, and you are now ready to go as a reseller. Right? You don't have to do anything special. You can punch something in there, you can white label it, you can brand it, so it's your logo, everything is yours. And then that customer can actually have their own set of phones, even their own APIs, right? They can use their own development APIs on your system. They can, any of the features they're offered have been built from the beginning as a sort of tree-based multi-tenant system. They can even be resellers, right? And those resellers can be resellers, right? So you can get really fancy with this. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, it looks like you've already added some billing support to this as well.
Correct. So one of the things that's been lacking in VoIP in general, there are billing solutions out there, and we actually want to integrate with the ones that are out there too. So that's a big initiative for us. But there's nothing that's integrated directly into the UI for the customer today. We see very few solutions, with basically the exception of Skype and Google Voice, which show you your account balance at the top, but can't do really sophisticated PBX features. There's a big void there that we intend to fill.
Well, and I'd even say even more than just in the UI, but also in the APIs, right? Because this is our example interface. You can build your whole company, build up your own interface using the APIs, and the billing will just be part of it and just work. And you can create service plans, and it's tightly integrated. And we'll call off to any of your bookkeepers, be it a hosted service,
or whatever,
whatever,
anything fancy. And again, Karl's point is really important. Everything you're doing in the UI right now, every single button you're clicking is calling the same APIs that you could have called from a command line or another software program.
Wow.
Curl, PHP, anything.
They don't care. And if you go back to that screen, we'll just show one more piece just to make sure that we understand this. If you turn on the PBX connector, which might be on the right, you may have to scroll over there. There you go. So if you turn that one on, this is an example where, let's say you have a PBX, or you're selling to customers who have PBXs already, and you just want to get them phone lines, right? There's even a system in here where if you click Add Server on the left, you can see that we integrate with existing PBXs, right? So you should recognize a lot of these brands, these names. These are systems that can plug into our system, and then the customer is sort of on their way to starting to use SIP and VoIP services. They don't need to move all of their functionality to the platform immediately, or they can do a hybrid. They can have some phones on the hosted side and then some phones that are still on their old PBX that sits in the closet.
One important note here too is that on the back end, this is not being powered by the same thing. These are different applications running in the back end for this specific purpose. So for example, that the PBX connectors is a very fast switching platform that doesn't have all the overhead of setting the caller ID and things like that the hosted PBX does.
Right. So just basically what Karl's saying is, just like we have applications we're exposing to the user on the front end, there are applications on the back end which you can turn on or off. So if you installed this as an open source product and you wanted to do this on your own, and you didn't want to offer PBX services, you wanted to do something else, just turn off the PBX module. It removes the APIs from even existing in the API web server. It removes any cruft or any overhead for those functionalities. It's just gone.
Or if you want to, if you want to write your own application, you can
plug
you
it
can
in.
do that. We have several ways that you can integrate into the system at various levels. So if you're really skilled, you can get down on our message bus with AMQP, or you could use REST interface, or so you can play right alongside the platform like a native application in any language that you want. You don't have to write it in Erlang. That's just what we use for our stuff.
Yep.
Wow. This is really, really powerful. I wanted to kind of give everybody a demonstration of the way this works. I'm going to go back to call flows here, and we will.
You can make a new one with a local extension number too, and that's yet another example where we looked at old telecom and we're like, we hate dial plans. We don't want to use them anymore. So if you want to make a new one, you can just make extension like 100 or something if you want.
Right. Well, I'll just go ahead and dial this number because I had this set up yesterday and it was working.
Hopefully it's
nothing like the live demo. Dun, dun, dun.
Let's see if this works.
Are you dialing from an actual IP phone?
No, I'm dialing from my cell phone.
Oh.
This is FLOSS Weekly with Randall Schwartz.
So now it's playing the media. That's what this button is at the top.
If you'd like to speak to Randall, press 1. If you'd like to speak to Aaron, press 2.
All right, so let's speak to Randall because I know he's watching. So let's speak to Randall.
See if Randall's phone's hooked up.
Hopefully. We'll do it again.
If it's ringing, his phone's probably not hooked up.
No. It was working. Basically, what I've got is I've got a. Oh, you know what? Because I pressed 2, so it's actually trying my phone, which I'm on.
There you go. Wait, if I can hear it.
Yeah. So that actually tried. Let me do it one more time, and we'll try Randall's number. I'll call it again. Helps when you press the right number. All right. So let's try this again.
This is FLOSS Weekly with Randall Schwartz and Aaron Newcomb. If you'd like to speak to Randall, press 1. If you'd like to speak to Aaron, press 2. Testing 1, 2, 3. Gee, I must have a fog in my throat. Please leave a nice message and not a mean one. You can catch more flies with sugar than you can with vinegar. In my case, you can never have enough flies. Wait for the beep.
All right. There we go. So that's how it works. It works really simply. And this worked the first time I set it up. I dragged these things into place. I got them the way I want. Of course, I had to upload some media. I recorded my own voice for some of it. I dubbed. I got some other stuff from other sources. But the thing that really impressed me with this is it just worked. And it worked the way I expected it to. And maybe that's because I'm familiar with the way telephone systems work. But I think everyone has a natural fluency, I guess, in the press 1, press 2, press 3 options at least. Maybe not everyone's going to be able to go to the depth of setting up an entire call center, with people logging in and out of their phones and so forth, all that kind of stuff. But for you to be able to set something like this up, in under 15 minutes. Including uploading all the media files, I think is really tremendous. You guys have done a really, really good job setting this thing up. It's really fun to play with, and I would encourage folks as they have the opportunity to try it out if they can.
Yep, we're trickling out those invites, so please go to kazoo.io to grab an invite if you're listening. And basically the reason we're trickling those out is, quite frankly, we want to make sure that nobody does anything too destructive, or that we don't have any serious bugs or stuff like that. So we're actually manually pinging people for feedback at this point with a lot of the initial invites. We've got well over, I think we're up to a couple thousand, but well over 1,000 people signed up for these numbers and this testing. And it's just growing every day. So we've been hugely impressed with the response. And the biggest, most interesting thing about the response has been it's generally people who want to sell this stuff or make it available to other people. It's not been as much of hobbyists or tinkerers, which is what we expected. It's a lot of people who are quite serious, where this apparently is going to fill a need for them, where there just doesn't seem to be anything else doing this right now. So we'll see what happens. That was the goal, though. So that's good.
It's amazing. It seems amazingly powerful, and the interface is fantastic. We've actually got a question from some guy in the IRC channel called Randall Schwartz. I know who he is. Anyway, he has a question.
I hear
yeah,
he's
he
always,
says,
always on the beach over there or something, slacking off.
yeah,
on the beach.
something like that. Yeah, with his feet up on a sun lounger. Yeah, so he wants to know. Yes, it's a quite hardball question actually. So is this an open core type thing, or is all of the stuff open source? So like the web interface that you've got there, is the only difference between a hosted version and maybe a local version just where the software runs? Are there any parts that you can't get without signing up and paying some money for?
There are no pieces of software right now that are held back.
It's all on GitHub. 2600 hertz.
A lot of people don't believe us when we say that, and that's probably a result of poor documentation. So we're working really hard to update the documentation to point people where to look for a lot of these pieces, because there are some pieces which are like part of Chef and not part of the regular repos and stuff like that. But everything is out there on GitHub under the 2600HZ project or username. I don't know the right GitHub terminology, but all those projects are there. We are a pretty unique company in that we work primarily off of sponsorships, and we basically, when a company comes to us and wants custom work, we look at it, and if we think it's going to be something that the general public within the next 5 to 10 years is going to expect to be a standard service and not necessarily a premium service, we basically won't do it under any exclusivity. We will only do it as a sponsorship and a contribution to the project. That is a very hard way to run a business. I cannot stress enough how difficult it is to run a business.
I was just going to say, are the customers receptive to that idea? Because I would imagine a lot of the big companies and so on would find that very alien, to the way they like to work.
It is alien. We've learned how to. So when they buy a product from Cisco, they don't get anything special either, right? Their competitor can buy that same product. So it takes some time to explain to them what's really different about that open source model versus, personally, frankly, the pricing at the end of the day is much cheaper, and the customization is much higher from our product, even if it's open sourced, than if they sit around and wait for Cisco or Avaya or Nortel, well, it was Nortel, to generate the same product.
Usually a lot more feedback, a lot better quality. I mean,
correct. So they basically, we have a lot of customers who've come to us and they say, we don't want to do it as open source. They leave. They come back 4 months later because they weren't able to find whatever they were looking for anywhere else. And that's not to say that our stuff is so special. It's this model that allows us to stay bleeding edge. We always have a line sort of to the community, so we know what people are interested in. And guess what? The stuff they ask for in the IRC channel, the stuff they ask for in the mailing list is the same stuff that they're going to ask for from Google or from Nortel, or I keep saying Nortel. Gotta stop doing that. From Avaya or ShoreTel. There we go. That's a tel. Those larger companies are getting the same requests and historically have much larger QA and development cycles, which don't cut it anymore in telecom. People want the stuff quickly. You can thank Apple for that, right? There's constantly a new app and a new this and a new that, and consumers don't want to wait anymore. So I think the companies are learning that the source code is no longer as valuable as the network, and the source code is no longer as available as the creativity and the customization you put in conjunction with the software. And that seems to be why most people are accepting this model. And frankly, I think that was half the point of this project, is that we see all of these things that you are perceiving as cool as basic building blocks. We don't actually see them as fancy. We see them as way overdue. This should be like the Linux platform of telecom, right? It should be the thing that's secretly running half the stuff that you buy or use, that has to do with media streams. Streaming media is a difficult nut to crack in general. It has different characteristics than what most of the rest of the internet is basically based on. And most people don't care how it works. They just want it to work. And it's actually very challenging. And there just isn't a good set of building blocks for that right now. So that's really what we're after.
Yeah, and you mentioned media streaming there. So can you handle video calls or anything like that?
We can do video pass-through with FreeSwitch, but we also have been able to do WebRTC abilities and also some transcoding using some third-party encoding, decoding pieces of software, which we can now hook in. I would say that by year's end, we should actually be able to allow you to use several different clients, like have a Skype client go talk to a Google client, GTalk client. and probably will also pull off a video soft phone in the browser, which probably will be doing multiple streams. So you can call that conferencing. So I think we're well on our way to making those sort of standard services. So I guess my comfort level is low on telling you, yes, if you use this in production, you're going to have a great time with video. There's still a lot of work to be done. But we literally prototyped a tablet calling a browser yesterday. And it worked fine. I mean, you basically pick up the tablet and you dial a number, and the system automatically figures out if the codecs are supported on the other end. If they're not, it's a regular old phone call. It just doesn't invoke video. And if the video is available, then it'll use it. And that's really
to a phone,
right.
Too, yeah, so, yeah.
And that's really important because there's a lot of companies coming out with sort of video apps, but they all require the other person to have the same app. And that's actually fine, except that most people who are making the call and even receiving the call, they don't want to have to be in a place where they have to decide these things. They just want to dial a number, and if there's video, great, and if there's not video, then there's not video, but they still call the person. But they're already used to the phone number as an identifier, or some ideas an identifier, and they don't want to change how they do that, and they don't want to sign up for new accounts. So anyway, we basically can overlay this technology on top of the PSTN technology, which is very powerful.
Excellent. And you talked a bit about the community there and the fact that everything is available through GitHub. So do you have any idea how many people are contributing to this? Do you get a lot of stuff from outside, patches and so on, that you can roll in?
We get a lot of feedback.
We get a lot of interaction with the community.
Yes.
Being written in Erlang, we don't get that many patches.
Yes, we need to invent Erlang engineers in the planet. There's not nearly enough.
But we've definitely seen some people write some very cool applications outside of the Erlang stack. A lot of PHP.
Yep.
I think there's a Perl out there.
There's now a .NET client that does printing to a fax machine. There's a bunch of stuff that's popping up. There's an iPad configuration tool that uses the APIs. So people are going hog wild at this point with what you can plug into the system. They're not tapping into the guts of the system as much as we'd like. But that even in the last month, for whatever reason, I think, again, because of the launch of Kazoo, people are now starting to realize that this thing is stable and can be used in production. We're starting to see a lot more people pick apart the code and try and understand it. And we're getting a lot of requests for Erlang trainings too. So obviously the language isn't as much of a barrier as it used to be. Erlang, on a side note, is an extremely interesting language. It was originally designed for telecom. The word Erlang is actually from the guy who invented the algorithm that was his last name, I believe, or somehow related to him. He was the guy who invented the algorithm to figure out how much cable or how much capacity was needed when calling between cities for the old phone network. And that measurement was an Erlang. And so then it became the name of the language because the language was actually designed for telecom. And the language was light years ahead of, in my opinion, was light years ahead of what most other people were doing. It's actually a very old language.
And it was a very forward-thinking language for sure.
Basically, most people were saying, oh, computers are just going to get faster. We'll keep writing stuff that fits on one box. And Joe Armstrong and his team basically said, no, if it's all in one box, it's not redundant or fault tolerant. And also, at some point, you want stuff to happen in parallel, just like it happens in real life. And so they basically, for 20 years, wrote something totally different, and everyone ignored them until like 2 years ago. And then was like, this has been here the whole time. Why aren't we using this?
This is perfect.
So I think even as far as I know, there's I think Facebook chat may be powered by this, by Erlang. Yeah. But there's a bunch of services that require concurrency that are pretty big and pretty quiet about using it.
Yeah, for sure.
Excellent. And just to jump back a little bit, because I know we talked a lot about licensing and so on, but you didn't actually say which license you're using. So which license do you use for all of your stuff?
It's under MPL. We've had one request from MIT, and I don't really care. We wanted the license to be as open as possible. I think the only reason we haven't dual licensed it is it just seemed like more work to do. We've got enough work to do. I guess some open suggestions there. MPL is pretty loose, so I think it's good enough. It's certainly good enough to sell in a commercial product. It's not GPL. It's not sticky. We want maximum penetration and as much feedback. Please go sell it. I don't care. That's great.
Great.
That's success to it.
Cool. Just one real quick. We got to wrap up because we're almost out of time. But one quick question that I had, and I saw it come up a little bit on the chat room too, is we talked about inbound and we showed the call flow for inbound. What about outbound? Is there things like least cost routing, which is where you can dial a number and the phone system will figure out obviously the lowest cost way to get that call put out to its destination. Are there things like that for outbound calls as well?
Yeah, so when you sign up and you're set up using our trunking service, which is either flat rate or per minute, and there's some good deals that Darren could go into on that. But one of the other things that we do, which I think is rather unique, is you can actually bring your own carrier. So if you already have, like, say, a Flow Route account, you can just go into the interface there and set it up and use them for your outbound call as well as your inbound. But so we're trying to give you some options there for that.
The reason we haven't built a full LCR engine is, again, we're trying to be a little forward thinking on this product in terms of where we spend our time. And so, like, I kicked and screamed about billing for a long time, but it's clearly something that's not going to go away because consumers are always going to pay for something for support and other services. But LCR is one of these things where I get that it's popular and I get that it does save money, a lot of money potentially. I'm not sure it's long term. The people who own these circuits, they are constantly changing the way that they bill and the strategies they bill. And so it's either going to remain an entire business to build LCR engines, which I don't think we want to get into. Or my bigger concern is I'm not sure how much longer people are going to pay for phone calls. I think the reality is that voice is being driven as a service over the internet that is between two peers, two endpoints. And it's very hard to bill for that. Once it really becomes a peer-to-peer service, you end up doing things like billing for the software, the support, or some flat rate fee. But LCR is really a game with taxation and tariffs and other things that have evolved over time on the phone network. They're either going to see a huge shift in how they work in the next 5 to 10 years, they're going to go away, or maybe we will have missed an opportunity, but at the cost of advancing the product's actual core features. And I'm okay with all of those things. So basically, unless someone pays us to build some crazy LCR engine, which I doubt will happen because there's a bunch of them out there already, I don't think we're going to build anything that sophisticated. That said, if you have something basic, you can do regular expressions within our system and simply say these carriers are for this area code or this country or whatever. And frankly, for most people, that seems to be good enough. We haven't really gotten a lot of complaints about that.
It's not so much about how much you're spending or distributing the cost or anything. Ours is about how do you mix the carriers to give a good experience. If this area doesn't service well with that carrier, do you have a backup and that kind of thing.
At the end of the day, carriers have to buy and sell from each other. It's no different than any sort of marketplace. Because none of them own all the fiber or copper or cell towers. There are different companies, they own different mechanisms to make and receive calls, and they all have to interconnect with each other, and they all charge each other for doing that.
Yeah. Well, at least people aren't locked out. I mean, at least you've given them the opportunity to use their own LCR mechanism, outside of, just you providing or not providing one. At least they can go do that in most cases. So I think that's great. One last question, and we're going to wrap up here is, and Randall would be upset with us if we didn't ask this question, VI or Emacs?
Is James listening?
Yeah. So in Erlang, Emacs is fantastic, but I still have a bunch of keys at the end of all my files.
I'm strictly VI. I still have not used Emacs at all. James over there, one of our other senior engineers, is smiling because he's on a mission to convert everyone to Emacs. So I would say that our office is split down the middle, and but the two you got here, I think, are VI. So.
Okay, cool. Well, that seems to be the case with most of the people that we asked the question there. Seems like it's almost a 50-50 split. Darren Schreiber and Karl Anderson, thank you so much for joining us and giving us this update. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for your time. We love being on the show. It's awesome. Thanks.
All right. You bet. Thanks, guys. Okay. Well, that's the 2600 Hertz newest addition to their family of things that they integrate with Kazoo. Dan, what do you think about Kazoo?
I thought it looked incredible, and I probably haven't got as much telecoms experience as you, Aaron, but I've done a bit of stuff with Asterisk and setting up phone systems for people with Asterisk, and I'm just imagining how much time, how many hours of my life I could have saved if I had that drag and drop interface to do it with rather than the old asterisk config files and stuff. That looks like incredible stuff. And I was really interested that they said they don't see this as an amazingly groundbreaking feature. They see it as something that should already be there, which is a great attitude as well.
Right, right. I know it was always a big deal when I was doing this kind of stuff is the interface. Customers want to do more and more themselves, and that generally gets them into trouble, or did when I was doing it, and we would have to come out and fix whatever they were doing. So I think it's really great that they are, looking at this. Hey, look, let's have a basic profile where people can just go in and set up some really basic things. Maybe there's a recipe, for doing something, and we call that recipe A, and they just click on it and it's there, and all they have to do is put in their media files or whatever their voicemail boxes that they set up, or something really, really simple like that. So I think it's cool that they're doing that. I think it's a huge, huge feature, and the system is so powerful otherwise. I was really surprised when we started getting into some of those advanced features that are offered, like call center type things that you just don't see with other systems, basic systems, let alone advanced systems and systems that are open source. The fact that this is open source and offers all this functionality is truly, truly amazing, I think, in my opinion.
And the real power of the API as well is incredible, because they were saying that their web interface just interacts with the API. So you've got people writing mobile apps, other things. You could write yourself a script to interact with the API. That's just incredible power to have.
Absolutely. A good API makes a program work. Absolutely. And speaking of making programs work, what makes our programs work are guests, and really cool guests that we have on. And so that's my transition of the day. So we're going to talk about who's coming up really quickly on FLOSS, since we're getting close to running out of time here. So back on August 8th, Randall should be back, I believe. He's in Fisley this week down in Brazil. And we're going to be talking about Falcon, which is a simple, fast, powerful programming language, another programming language show. This one is supposed to be easy to learn and quick for people to feel comfortable with. It includes a scripting engine ready to empower mission-critical, multi-threaded applications. So we're going to be talking about Falcon on August 8th. Then on August 15th, we're going to be having another update show. We don't do these very often because we have so many people wanting to come on the show and talk about their projects, and we want to get them all in. So we don't do updates very often, but on August 15th, we're going to be talking about Sugar CRM. They're going to be coming back on the show to tell us what's new with their customer relationship management software that's open source. And then on August 22nd, we're going to have Open Bravo, which is an ERP software that also does some point of sale retail kind of things. So it's open source software that you can run on a screen and run a store from if you want to do that. And so and it integrates with Sugar CRM, so the timing there is very good. And then on August 28th, where we will be talking about Enterprise DB, which is an enterprise class database based on Postgres. So if you're a Postgres fan, you may or may not already know about Enterprise DB, but if you're looking for an alternative to run an enterprise-wide database in your environment, large database kind of thing, you might want to tune in for Enterprise DB. Just some quick things as far as this show is concerned. You can follow us on Twitter or Identica at Floss Weekly. There's also Floss Weekly on G+. If you do plus and then start typing in Floss, you should see Floss Weekly come up on Google+. And then you can also tune in, obviously, live right here on the TWiT network at live.twit.tv, or join us in the chat at irc.twit.tv. As far as I'm concerned, you can follow me on Google+. That's the best way to follow me. And in fact, if you want to just stay tuned, just don't even stop watching. Just stay tuned on the TWiT network, and I'll be on This Week in Google later on this afternoon. So do that. Dan, let me throw it over to you for some quick plugs.
Yeah, I'm going to quickly mention OggCamp, which I mentioned last week, the biggest open source event in the UK right now. It's happening in Liverpool on the 18th and 19th of August, so it's just over 2 weeks away. We've got about 50 or 60 tickets left. The tickets are free. If you go to oggcamp.org, oggcamp.org, you can sign up there. There's an Eventbrite link. And apart from that, if you want to find anything I'm doing, you can head to the address on the bottom of the screen there, danlynch.org, and find all the stuff there.
I think that's awesome that the camp is free. You don't find that much anymore. I mean, even here in the States, there's some sort of registration cost usually. So I think it's great that you guys are able to make that free for people to attend. It's really cool.
Yep, and I forgot to say, Simon Phipps has just signed up as well. So he's going to be here. He's going to be speaking on behalf of the Open Rights Group in the UK. So that's going to be cool. So everybody who watches this show regularly knows Simon. So if you're in the UK, come along and meet me and Simon and all the other people.
Great. That's awesome. Let's hope that everybody does that. Well, for now, that's all the time we have. So we're going to have to say goodbye. Until next time, join us again on Floss Weekly.